I am an 8th grade math teacher at LB Middle School in Richmond County, North Carolina. I've been teaching 8th grade math for about 12 years. My Keenan Fellowship has allowed me to partner with First Health Hospital.
So Talia came here and wanted to find out a little bit about healthcare and how she could use healthcare examples in her curriculum.
My goal is to be able to take the experiences that I've had here at the hospital and be able to translate those into lesson plans that not only I can use, but I can use with the teachers at my school and disseminate to teachers throughout the county and across the state.
Everywhere in this hospital, you're using computers, you're using other technology, and you're using math skills for their jobs. And I think it's very exciting because as she goes back to her class is going to see an overview of healthcare and really see different opportunities that they can choose for their life, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a pharmacist, or whether it's someone who works in the nursing departments.
I'm hoping to use these experiences to create opportunities for my students to actually think through processes, to them to be able to apply the math that we teach, not just to see it in the textbook, but to know how it relates to the 21st century, how they might see it once they get out into the job force, or what's going on right now in the world around them.
We're trying to find the body dimensions, the length, and the temperature.
If the baby's sick or something, it matters what size it is.
You're doing stuff that the people in the hospitals really have to do.
So one thing I wanted to bring back to you is some of those experiences of being able to make a conversion from the metric to the customary, or customary back to metric, so that you've been through that process before. So if you happen to decide to go in the health profession, or if you happen to be in the hospital one day, when they're saying something to you, you'll actually understand what they're talking about.
I've been principal here for 4 years, and I'm very proud of Tanya for receiving the Keenan Fellowship. The other teachers on this campus have been able to see her use performance tasks in a different way, and her experience has been deepened by her experience with Keenan Fellows in terms of being able to relate to 21st century skills and relate to what's going on in the job market right now in our area in the industry. And they've been able to see how to apply those content standards to the performance tasks in a more meaningful way.
The Keenan Fellow opportunity has just empowered me to know that there's a need. And not only is there a need, but that it can easily be done to bring those experiences into the classroom. It takes that connection, because a lot of times we say, you're going to use it in the real world, but when we can't provide those opportunities where they see it, then it's hard for them to believe us. But when we can recreate an authentic experience and they know that it's actually out there in the real world, then it's easier for them to buy into it.
Great video. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator of our first panel. I'm going to give you the abbreviated version because if I gave you the full version of all the honors, accolades, and great things he's done for the state, we would be here all morning. Ruben Carbonell is the Frank Hawkins Keenan Distinguished Professor of Chemical Engineering here at NC State University, and is also the director of the William Keenan Institute for Engineering, Technology, and Science. And so I'm going to go ahead and let you get started.
Oh, you forgot that he's on the IEI.
And he's on the IEI board, and he's our boss. Okay.
Thanks very much, Anita. It's really a great pleasure for me to be able to be on this panel. The title of the panel is Analyzing the Innovation Pipeline. And we have with us today three really outstanding leaders in North Carolina that were able to speak to all the topics associated with this main theme. As director of the Keenan Institute, we've been immersed in these issues of technology commercialization, education, public policy, and basic research that we can do to enhance the economic and social well-being of the state. For a long time, we provide seed funding for all these activities, including the Keenan Fellows program that you saw highlighted in the last video. I also happen to be the director of a program called the Biomanufacturing Training and Education Center here, or BTEC at NC State, which is one of a larger effort called NC Bio Impact that was established by the legislature a few years ago and combines not only BTEC but also North Carolina Community College System and the Bright Center at NCCU to provide training workforce for the biopharmaceutical industry, which is a very major component of the state's economy. And we're all doing this by providing real hands-on experiences for students at all levels in large-scale equipment used in biomanufacturing. And these students come out really work ready by the time they graduate. We're very proud at BTEC that we have 100% hiring of our students with a minor in biomanufacturing into the pharmaceutical industry within 6 months of graduation. That is the kind of thing that we need to do more. And it's the kind of thing that our panel is going to be addressing as the efforts that we need to move forward, not only in biopharmaceuticals, but in other areas. So this morning we heard a lot about where the state is and the challenges in education, etc. And the innovation pipeline that we need really has two feed streams. As a chemical engineer, can talk about these things easily. One feed stream into the pipeline has to be a trained workforce at all levels, from high school all the way to the postdoctoral, because we know research is important. At the other end is a pipeline or a feed stream that has to have new ideas and new technologies from either research at universities or in industry that can be turned into new products, new processes, new companies. That is the pipeline. And of course, at the end of the pipeline, we have to have public policies and approaches that will facilitate these commercialization efforts and create new companies with new jobs here in the state. So our panel will be addressing these, and I'm going to now briefly introduce them, and we'll get going with the questions. To my right is Marty Klantz, who is the Community Relations Manager for Piedmont Natural Gas, representing industry here in the panel. And to her right is Steve Scott, the President of Wake Tech Community College, who's one of our partners actually here at BTEC in the Capsule Center. And then to his right is Leslie Boney, the Vice President for International Community and Economic Engagement at the UNC General Administration. So we have representatives from industry, the community colleges, and the UNCGA. So I'm going to start the questions. The first one for Marty. And Marty, we just heard Sam Houston talk about teacher quality and the importance of the teachers in quality STEM education for the students. I know you've been involved in a program called Immersion in your company. Would you like to say a few words about it and let us know more?
Absolutely. And thank you, Ruben, for mentioning pipeline. I love that as a natural gas employee. Here in that that's fun, so thanks for the shout out. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today about a really fun program that we developed in Charlotte last year. And we've got a lot of our partners from last year in the room, so I wanted to say thank you to Duke Energy and Time Warner Cable and Discovery Place. So they're all partners for this program called Submersion. Let me give you a little bit of background about that. It's really kind of a unique public and private partnership between our school system, our local community college, Central Piedmont Community College, as well as companies like Piedmont Natural Gas, Duke Energy, Areva, Siemens, Coca-Cola Bottling, companies like that. And we really came together as volunteers and worked together for about 9 months last year to formulate a 2-week-long program, an intensive study where 25 STEM-related middle and high school teachers would come on site to our companies for 1 or 2 days for each company and be immersed in learning about the skills that they teach every day in the classroom, learning how those are put to work in the real world. So it was so much fun and really cool to be a part of it. Like I said, it was a 2-week program. It was so successful that we are doubling that this year, and we've also expanded into another county. And so we hope to to eventually take this statewide. So we appreciate all of the North Carolina leaders here today that will learn about STEMmersion. Really with the ultimate goal to ensure that all high school students graduate either college ready or career ready. So that was our goal. You've probably read a lot about companies like Siemens and Ariba that have moved to Charlotte. And you've probably also heard that Charlotte is quickly becoming an energy hub. There's about 250 energy-related companies now based in our area. So there's a tremendous need for well-trained and skilled workers. So that is really the driver behind creating this STEMmersion program. We actually won an award in February from the Business Journal for advanced manufacturing around best collaboration, so we were thrilled with that. Again, let me tell you some of those partners. We had Ariba, Coca-Cola Bottling Company, Central Piedmont Community College, our Charlotte Mecklenburg School System, Discovery Place, Duke Energy, Livingston and Haven, and MEC-Ed. So those were great partners at the table, and really we were just volunteers and created this. We are working on this year's STEMmersion program, which will run from July 22nd through August 2nd. And again, we will be doubling the size. We served 25 students, 25 teachers last year. This year we're going to 50. Last year we had, I think, 56 applicants for those 25 spaces, so we know there's a demand and a need. The teachers do receive a small stipend for their time and travel around the county, but really at the end we learned from them that the true value was getting to see the skills that they teach every day being put to work in the real world, and getting to see all the different variety of types of jobs that are available at our different companies. That was thrilling to them, and it's so exciting to see that there were jobs available. Everybody hears, oh, there's no jobs available. Well, we all showed them that it's not true, but we also tried to instill in them that it's critical that they teach the skills that we're going to need later on down that pipeline. So they really got that connection, and so they were thrilled to be a part of it. And as you probably heard from other companies, particularly utilities, we have an aging workforce, and that is true at Piedmont, true at Duke. I think our average age at Piedmont is 47, which to me doesn't sound that old, but that really means that brain power is walking out the door every day. And so we've got to replace those smart workers every day as well. We just celebrated the 55th anniversary of an employee at Piedmont. Must have started at 12. So these are good jobs, and people don't leave, but they stay, and 30 and 40-year employees is not unusual in the utility business. But we've got to replace that brain power. So we hopefully instilled in that in the teachers that this is critical, that they understand the importance of what they do every day. Let me tell you a little bit about what we did just on our day at Piedmont. We started out the day with our CEO, Tom Skanes, who was like a rock star to these teachers. He left that meeting feeling so great. They wanted the pictures made with him. They asked questions for an hour of him, and he was gracious enough to hang around and talk with them, and we were so impressed by the questions. He offered a little energy quiz that he likes to do and kind of get a baseline of what they know about the natural gas business and the energy business. And they were just so amazed by the whole energy business in general and what he talked about. Then we gave them a good overview of the natural gas business, showed a couple PowerPoint presentations. It really was meant to be a hands-on day. So after that little brief time with presentations, we put them to work, literally. We met in our corporate kitchen. Of course, a lot of our business in the natural gas business is around cooking. And so we have a corporate kitchen, and we gave them their Piedmont natural gas aprons and put them to work cooking their lunch. So they did that and had a great time, and then we loaded them up and took them to a natural gas simulator in the northern part of the county, and they literally laid pipe, fused pipe, set a meter, detected gas leaks, things like that, the real hands-on work that our gas workers do every day. So they did that, and then they came back and just did some debriefing, but overall, that's sort of what the days look like at all the companies. They would go and do some hands-on things, learn a little bit about the business, talk with HR professionals, talk with employees, see what they did, see where their career paths have taken them, where they started in college, the skill sets that they needed. And this is all to charge them to go back in the classroom and develop skill sets and teachings that will bring those back to the table for our companies later on. So we're thrilled with the results last year. We've got even more teachers interested this year, and we're looking for more company partners. We feel like we were lacking in the healthcare business, so we're reaching out to healthcare professionals right now to see if we can bring them on board, because that's a huge industry in the Charlotte area as well. And we've also reached out to Microsoft, and hopefully we're going to bring them on as a partner as well. So, but we're always looking for new partners. So if anybody here is interested, I would love to hear from you later. I've got my cards here. And you also have a Simmerson handout in your packet of information, and it's got our website. So I'd love for you to go and check out some of our videos. Livingston and Haven donated their communications team for about a month and a half, and all they did was go around and film and put together videos. And so there's some really neat things out there on YouTube from our website. So check that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marty. Really excited. That's the kind of things that we need to do more in the state to make sure that the teachers are aware of all the opportunities for students. My next question is for Steve. The issue of workforce content, knowledge, and competencies is really crucial. I know that the community college played a tremendous role in economic development and workforce development. How are the community colleges positioning themselves to address the new challenges that are coming in the discussion this morning?
Thank you, Ruben. Good morning. Thanks, good morning. No adult left behind. Community colleges are designed for adults and adult learning. Here in North Carolina, originally the community college system was created to move us from an agrarian economy to a manufacturing economy in the 50s and the 60s. And community colleges have continued to evolve. So for us, STEM is not new. I mean, at Wake Technical Community College, technical is one of our middle names. Increasing STEM efforts, however, is moving in many ways. And let's talk about a little bit about that for a little moment. First of all, the community college role in education and employment is just that for large numbers of people. Last year, over 800,000 North Carolinians registered for one or more courses at a community college. That's 1 out of every 8 adults, aged 18 to 65. About 550,000 of them were in continuing education, and about 250,000 of them were in academic programs at the 58 community colleges. 3 areas I wanted to address this morning: remediation, core curricula, and the skills gap mismatch that we hear so much about. And I'd like to wrap those 3 things in entrepreneurship, because I think that's the key change, is the entrepreneurship, but being the business of one. In other words, how do we keep reinventing ourselves? How are people in the future going to reinvent themselves into new skill sets that are needed in order to be competitive in the global marketplace? I don't think we're there yet with the 3D printers so that you can go up and say, like Jean-Luc Picard, I want Earl Grey here, hot. But the possibility of saying, well, put a DNA sample in there and make a steak for me instead of just a cup of tea. We may be getting down to that nano and micro manufacturing. I don't know if we're there yet, but it may be a long time before you can be on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise and actually go to your replicator and get those things. So let's bring it back down to our pipeline. Number 1 is remediation. Over 50% of the first-time students coming into North Carolina community colleges need some form of math, English, or reading remediation. So in order to have a systemic change in the community college, we can't be nibbling around the edges. There are all kinds of initiatives out there, but what happens after the grant money runs out and what changes. So as a community college system, one of the biggest things we're doing as an entire system is looking at our developmental or remedial math. We're streamlining it. Instead of a student having to take an entire course, we're dividing them into 2-week and 3-week and 4-week modules so that if a student only needs this much of a remedial math course, that's all they have to take instead of having to take an entire course to get that. We're also using technology. You've all heard about MOOCs. Well, you've heard about it at Stanford and the MIT end. I think Stanford, a couple of Stanford profs did one on artificial intelligence, and 150,000 people around the world signed up for that massive online course. Ours is at the other extreme in the remedial. So we're doing those with Udacity, same people that Stanford worked with, but we're at the other end on the remedial math and funded by the Gates Endowment, and so we're rolling out some remedial courses there. So that's one. Second is core curriculum. We've got to keep integrating decision-making, problem-solving, data analysis into multiple courses, not just in the Gen Ed course. That's what we at community colleges keep hearing from our advisory committees. Also, I talked with one of you at the break whose husband was in the simulations and game business. I think that using the same technology that we use for the blow 'em up, shoot 'em up video games, we can make education a lot more exciting and dynamic and engaging for students. So the question becomes, how do we make it profitable for the developers to move into that area of simulations? And the other is the skills gap mismatch. There are, boy, you talk about the amount of ink and airtime that the quote skills gap gets. Well, there's two levels to that skills gap. The one is the lower level where businesses are looking for individuals to work with skills for $10 or $12 an hour, that the people think that they should be making $18 or $20 an hour. That's where the gap really is the expectation of the people with those skills and the willingness of people to employ in that level. The other side is the one that we tend to focus on in community colleges also, and that's the higher end of the skills gap. And the best examples I can give you are the third-party certifications in software, whether they be for Microsoft, for Cisco, for Red Hat, or whoever. We are moving those programs from being embedded in a 2-year associate degree to more of the continuing education, just-in-time model. So those are the three really big areas of STEM integration. Community colleges are involved in many others, but that gives us a little idea.
Thank you very much, Steve. Lastly, the UNC Board of Governors just completed a strategic directions planning process. They produced a document called Our Time and Our Future. What strategies and actions can the UNCGA take to facilitate this process of innovation and commercialization and economic growth of the state?
Well, first, thanks, Ruben, and thanks to all of you for coming today. It's rare that I am introduced in a group as the person farthest to the right. As I was thinking about it, from your perspective, I'm really farthest to the left. I think the truth is I'm probably somewhere in the middle. So after getting over that disorientation, I did notice and become humbled by the fact that the people out here are really smart, and most of our university personnel from UNC General Administration is in Pembroke today. And so I'm a non-scientist, but I'm one of the biggest fans of science that there could be. So saying anything to you is sort of like saying something to Billy Graham about religion. The role of UNC General Administration, which is the system office, is not to do the science. It is sort of like BASF. It's to make sure the science is done better, or to create an environment. If we do our jobs right, we create an environment where it's possible for science to be done better by the public universities of the state, and to connect better with the K-12 system, the corporate partners, the public policy partners that we have. So on some level, at our best, we are the techies supporting rock stars like Ruben, or Sam, or several of the other rock stars that we've already identified today. So our job is to support rock stars. I think there are 4 things in our strategic plan that are relevant maybe to this get-together today. The first is an observation that Ruben and Joe Desimone really helped us with, which is that science on a university level at least is trending bigger, that those who can play bigger do better. So divided as individual universities, I think going into the future we have to find united we rock. And so one of the proposals in our strategic plan has to do with aggregating our collective university resources across our entire university system to enable us to play bigger. We named some specific areas: advanced manufacturing, which we talked about a little bit today, big data, which I'm sure we'll be talking about throughout the day, defense, energy, we've already talked some about, marine and coastal sciences, pharmacoengineering, sort of the life sciences subcategory. And the belief is that by working together, by sharing equipment, by doing things together, we'll have a better chance of being more successful at discovering more stuff in the future. Second area has been called by various names. By Ruben, he called it feed stream. Marty called it pipeline. I was calling it throughput. But there are a lot of people who emerge from our K-12 system that are interested in science. And the question is, what portion of them end up going into science, going into technology, or becoming fans or advocates or zealots for the importance of this going forward. So we need to do a better job of shoring up that pipeline and making sure that not too many people leak out of it. Among our proposals, getting a greater enrollment at the North Carolina School of Science and Math, which is going to create more people going into our universities, finding ways to retain more innovative people at the master's and doctoral, postdoctoral level, being aware that a lot of the talent that stays in our state comes from the rest of the world, and we can't diminish that. We need to take advantage of it. Taking advantage of things like professional science master's programs that provide opportunities that are industry informed, that help more people to understand science and what to do with it, and holding on to promising and already proven faculty. So this plugging up of the pipeline is the second thing. Third thing, what we call scouts and seeds. We've got to find a way to get more innovation out of the discoveries that folks make across our system. We've got a lot of people finding things. Faculty members that discover things don't always know what to do with them, and they might need advice or help with somebody else to figure out what this thing that they're thinking about in a particular way could be used for or turned into a real innovation that could create jobs. We've got to find a better way of doing that, and there are some proposals in our strategic plan to increase that. And the final thing is something that has been alluded to a couple of times this morning, and that is that science is not necessarily going to proceed in the future along strict disciplinary lines. So that if you think about the creation of a nanoparticle, it is a creation of someone who understands biology. It's going to get to the right place in the body for a treatment. It needs to have a particular shape, to travel in a particular way. If it's going to be excreted at some point, somebody's got to figure out what the social science implications of that are. What are the ethical implications of these new things that we're creating? And what does it look like? Does it look attractive? Is it something that people could do? So this idea of bringing together different disciplines within traditional science with engineering, with the arts, with ethics and social science, I think is something that's going to be more important to us going forward. If North Carolina can figure out how to do that, then I think we'll have a strategic advantage going forward. So that's a quick summary of where we went with our thinking on a system level in this plan. I commend it to all of you. It's fascinating. After you finish knocking off Sam Houston's report, that logically flow that into it. And Sam's report's only going to get you to 3 a.m. This gets you to 7 a.m. So
How many pages is it?
it's 112. But it's like page turner.
Thank you very much. One of the things that, just listening to you speak, when Joseph and I were working on this, we noticed that in federal grants coming to states, in all areas, including medicine, engineering, sciences, if you combine the UNC federal grants per year in dollars, and those of NC State, and treat them like one unit. You have to remember, you have to treat them like one unit, because UNC does not have engineering. We here in NC State don't have medicine, so we together are like one big University of Minnesota. We ended up number 4 in the country, which is sort of shown in the graph that you showed this morning. However, when John talked this morning about the fact that that only accounts for a third of all the research and development that is going on in the state, what that really speaks to is how do we work more closely with companies to help those companies not only integrate what they're doing and add new ideas to the universities, but how do we more effectively collaborate so that we can leverage both of those big wins. And of course, that doesn't leave out any other university, because right now, as Leslie mentioned, this big research game is one that gets played not by having one university in a grant or one group in a grant, but sometimes many universities in a state and sometimes many states. That's where the large science is going. And to your point about interdisciplinarity, it is true that now not only are scientists working on this, but people that are non-scientists or even soft areas. Joe and I had a research grant that we got several years ago, and we were competing with a lot of very strong groups. And the one distinguishing factor of ours is that we chose to put a psychologist into our team to see how scientists were working together at distances among 5 different states. If it hadn't been for that, the NSF told us you would not have gotten this grant. It was a $40 million grant for 10 years. So it's these kinds of things that are innovative and new angles on how to do research, et cetera, that are really going to move us forward. And thank you very much for your comments. One of the things that I wanted to ask the panel for comments on is, from what you saw this morning and the presentations, was there anything that surprised you about any of the data or anything that elicited new ideas that you might be thinking about now that you want to share with us?
I'm not sure that I've heard anything new, but I think it's critical that businesses get more involved. We bring the relevancy to the table. You can see every day these skill sets at use, and so I think it's important for companies like Piedmont to step up to the plate and offer internships and externships and job sharing and all these fun things that we're starting to do. I think it's critical that we get involved, and we look forward to that. Because it only benefits us.
Long ago, in a universe far, far away, I used to do a daily word program on the radio, and one of my favorite words was harmful skepsis, which is the act, you all know this, the act of gazing intently at one's own navel. And as John Harden spoke this morning, I was reminded that we in North Carolina are pretty darn good at that. And I thought it was really refreshing to hear him very clearly remind us that the state of innovation, at least on his preliminary data, is unhealthy and not improving. I think too often we tend to believe our own hype. And I think it's really important, if we're going to change and get better, that we take the real data that we see seriously and get serious about making improvements. So that was really important to me. And the part that I thought was important from that was this notion that we do a really good job of securing academic R&D funding, but in terms of the total output that comes out the back end from both manufacturing R&D and academic R&D is not as high as some other states and as you might expect. So I think that's a big challenge to the university system, and it's something that, is not that hard to work on. We really can do a better job of building off the models that NC State has of public-private collaborations in research and some of our other millennial campuses. And so I think that's something that I'll take really seriously.
I think it was reinforced the importance of innovation and education and a qualified workforce, and that the fact that the cost differences were getting smaller and smaller, and that the drivers are going to continue to be, as they have been predicted, to be education, innovation, and workforce preparedness.
Thank you very much. One of the comment that I would have to answer my own question, I guess, is that we
What do you think?
we need to spend a little time also kind of looking at our competition. We're seeing what the end results are in Georgia and California, and we're not asking ourselves, well, what are they doing? Are they investing differently, or are there better practices out there? And I can tell you from my end, at BTEC, we founded BTEC, the BioImpact was originally that whole idea, that whole concept of putting together community colleges with the universities and training specifically for a workforce that needs manpower. That originated in North Carolina in 2002. The buildings were built in 2007, I guess BTEC was completed. It took 5 years to develop. So it's been 10 years. Well, people love that idea. They loved it here, and they loved it even more in Texas, and they're loving it more in Thailand, and Singapore, and China, and Japan, and we're getting visitors from all over the place. So just last year, Georgia Tech opened a brander, newer, stronger version of that. So therefore, all of a sudden now they're landing $91 million contracts with GSK to make vaccines. We landed Novartis, so we did well, but they're going to do well as well. But it is a continuing stream. The pipeline doesn't stop. In other words, to say, there's some Greek philosophers that talking about a moving stream and the future. Well, this pipeline is flowing, and it's flowing in all the states. So I think we need to actually pay very close attention not only to what we're doing, but what we need to do to stay competitive. And then to do that, you have to look at the competition as well and what they're involved in. And we have a little bit more time, and I wanted to see if, I'm sorry. Do you have a question?
A question or a comment?
Sure.
In addition to the need for collaboration and pipeline-style thinking and big data and multidisciplinary approaches, I'd like to add the dimension of long-term thinking. As many of the audience may know, the International Union of Geological Sciences is preoccupied these days with the fact that this is a critical moment in time in a long-term context, in a geological context, and that since the Industrial Revolution, our species has radically altered the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the lithosphere, and biosphere, and the soil sphere. And so there is a consideration underway to rename the current epoch of geologic time since the Industrial Revolution, which is clearly marked in the rock sequence as potentially the name, the Anthropocene or the Anthropocene, to mark our unique and pervasive impact on all of the Earth systems. The point being that we, as many have commented, are often preoccupied with a very short time span that is very uninforming about the longer term implications of the trends we're on. So I would be an advocate, and I would ask the panel for comments on to what degree do we need to stretch out the time horizon of the way we think, because we may be inadvertently shifting deck chairs on a Titanic without actually discussing the Titanic as a whole.
I'll say one thing. When we were developing our priority research areas and looking at the long-term impact, there's pretty good data that shows over time that these sorts of investments make a difference. And ultimately, based on some past performance, we were able to come up with a projection that showed that these investments by 2025 would create roughly 375 new patents and 200 new companies. And the immediate follow-up question as soon as we launched that projection was, okay, but how many next year? And I think this is a society that has gotten very focused on 1 to 2 year election cycles, and it's very hard to make a case for science that is clear, insert science here, output B emerges linearly out the backside. So I think that is a challenge that we have, is to find a way to talk about the meaning of science in the near term without compromising our integrity and admitting that at its best, science is a longer term proposition.
As a follow-up on that, if you think about American businesses that are based on the next quarterly profit, you'll see the trend that's emerging in the U.S. stock market is fewer companies, fewer public companies, because companies are realizing what you just said, that they're in it for the long term, and in order to survive over the long term, they may have to forego quarterly profits as such. I think there's a lesson for us in education, is they tell us that, well, we need to be more business-like, that you may reach a point where you're focusing on the next 3 months and have forgotten that your true job is there to educate people.
I think it was Sharon Decker that said it earlier that the focus really should be on our kids. And to me, that means we've got to continue bringing relevancy to the classroom earlier and earlier. I say start them in kindergarten on STEM training and getting them interested in those potential careers, because there are neat things like designing games that are part of that, as well as laying pipe and doing all sorts of interesting things that we do at Piedmont Natural Gas. So I think it's really important to start even earlier to get students interested in these kinds of careers and make sure that they follow the right pathways to get the right skills to take over those jobs of the future.
I've been in academia now for 40 years in California and also North Carolina. And one of the things I really miss in both places has been a support base for education and research at a high level that has continuity past 5, 10, 20 years, regardless of who's in the party, because we're not going to get, I don't think Democrats and Republicans disagree with a lot of the things that were said today. Everyone wants their kids trained better. They all value research, they all value education, and they see the value in terms of economic growth. So it's nice to have a group like a science board, for example, that regardless of what happens, there's a group of folks continuously interested in this problem, looking backwards and forwards as to where we'll go in the future, and making recommendations to the government about investments. One of the distinguishing features of people from other countries that have come to visit me today is that they're working, some of them, in their third 20-year plan. I have yet to see a 5-year plan coming out of the federal level. So, good morning. Is it question? One more question.
One more question.
It won't take more than 20.
Just a quick question. So, I'm from a small business. We're about 200 people, mostly very high technology, Department of Defense. One of the things that we see over and over is basic research, fundamental research that does not transition, goes through what we describe as the valley of death, goes there to die, and it gaps. There's no transition for this region, North Carolina on the whole, but in particular, Raleigh-Durham area, is unique in that we have such a deep pool of Tier 1 research institutions. There's a huge gap in that, but to me, one of the fundamental problems is the failure for academia to be able to link into small business, particularly in high technology areas. There was a study done by the Department of Defense around 11 or 12 years ago where they defined innovation as something that was quantifiable, a metric. And I don't recall exactly how they did it. But what they did is they did a study over about a 10-year period, and they found that over 80 or 85% of all innovation in the Department of Defense, a massive research and development organization, came from small businesses with less than 500 employees. So they found that most of their value in innovation is coming from small business, but over 90% of the research and development funds went to big business. So the value proposition wasn't in it. what is your, do you have any comments on how the university systems, these Tier 1 research organizations could better link with small business to start to address this gap?
Let me take one response, and I think our next panelist will be able to speak to this issue.
This will be the last word on this. First, I'd say, since this will be the last word, that there will be an afterword, maybe during the next break, with someone who's specifically from SPDC. But I would lift that up as a resource that does a pretty good job of understanding both the military culture and technology and working with small businesses. I think we as universities are better set up to work with large businesses rather than small businesses. I think DoD is better set up to make large grants rather than small grants. And I think that's true of most of our businesses now. Most of our businesses are acquiring technology rather than inventing it themselves. So I think it's a systemic problem, not just limited to DoD, that the temptation is to make fewer grants in larger denominations, but the reality is that innovation is coming out of smaller places. And business approach has been to buy them. Wait till they discover it and buy the company rather than investing in their own research. So I don't have a great answer for how we overcome that in the future, except to say that we're trying to orient our universities to be better at working with smaller companies. So that's a goal that we have in the future, and as for exactly how we do that, I think that's something that we've got to work on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our panel.
And I, again, encourage you to talk during breaks and at lunch and continue this conversation. As we're inviting the next panel up, I do want to share introduce to you our next video. Our next key challenge 3 is how can we engage the public and decision makers to support science and technology, learning, and economic development. And the example that the partnership wanted to highlight was the E3 program. It really needs no introduction. You'll hear about it more in the video.
We're here in Fletcher, North Carolina, at Cane Creek Cycling Components. We make high-end bicycle components. We were fortunate enough to receive a scholarship for E3, and the amount of consulting services that you would receive around business assessment, energy efficiency, lean manufacturing, etc., go into tens of thousands of dollars.
E3 is a federal-based program that North Carolina's really taken and ran with, and the 3 E stand for economy, energy, and environment. E3 is probably the best program I've seen as far as its long-term sustainability as a partnership between both the community and manufacturers. The goals of E3 are to work with small to medium-sized manufacturers to work for long-term sustainability in the community. And as each community develops, the idea is to have these long-term sustainability councils that will help support the manufacturers long-term. The E3 process involves 5 different assessments. There's a business process assessment, there's an energy assessment, a safety assessment, carbon footprint assessment, and then a lean and green, which you never get a sign on the front of the door to say we're lean. It's always we're looking at better ways to make a better process. It also allows them to have growth.
While we used that lean manufacturing assessment in one element of our business, how we build shocks, we're slowly applying that to everything we do. Being more efficient and examining every step in the process has made our engineers more efficient and how they lay out their product development schedule. So there's a wide array of ways that we are taking what we learned in E3 and applying it to product development. We had quality issues with some of the parts that were coming from Asia, and that forced us to invest in CNC machinery so that we can cut metal here.
Our goal is to keep jobs, and one of the ways we're measured as a group is how many jobs we create or are able to retain in North Carolina. Reshoring a lot of times was chasing cheap labor. Companies went overseas for labor reasons. But what companies are finding now is that labor is only part of the cost.
We want to employ as many people as we can here in the States and here in Fletcher, North Carolina, and it's got to make economic sense. We made the decisions that were right for Cane Creek around production of our shocks, which require a super level of quality control that we can't necessarily find overseas.
So we're seeing companies from all sectors reshore and bring products back from overseas, from furniture to electronic manufacturers. These guys are being bicycle parts. Yeah, advanced manufacturing definitely take over. The skill levels that people need from the days of the textile and furniture changed quite a bit. You got computer-aided machine drafting along with electronics, skills that we just didn't have in the past.
So as we continue to grow, we're finding that we have more capacity than we realized. Chris and his team are available now. We can pick up phone and call them. There is a relationship now and it's building, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
That is the E3 program. So next on the agenda, we will hear from 3 North Carolina businesses that have benefited from public investments, both state and federal. Those include the grant programs that John mentioned earlier in his presentation, those from the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and our very own Centennial Campus. Moderating the session is Sam Taylor, who is the president of NC Bio. And I'll let you.
Thank you. And good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. Leslie, where are you? Leslie's still here. It is a page turner. I got to tell you, the strategic plan. As a policy geek, I was very, very interested in the innovation portion of the strategic plan that the university's put out. I would encourage you all to look at that because it hits some high points, and it has some. I think it really puts its thumb on the pulse of the problem in many places. As Sarah said, I'm Sam Taylor. I'm president of the North Carolina Biosciences Organization. We're the trade association for the life science industry in North Carolina. Life science has covered a lot of ground in our eyes, and hopefully in yours, but it includes pharmaceuticals, medical devices, industrial biotechnology, agricultural biotechnology, nanobiotechnology. We have about 150 members statewide. We are not the North Carolina Biotechnology Center. Everybody often confused, but the Biotechnology Center is a state-funded nonprofit that does an excellent job of stimulating economic growth and innovation in the life science sector in North Carolina. We're a trade association, and we support the Biotechnology Center in every way we can, including asking the General Assembly to give more money every year. But that's another story. Our main focus at NC Bio is to create a climate in North Carolina that is favorable to innovation. I'd like to say life sciences, and certainly I'm prejudiced for that, but innovation is where we try to focus our energy, and we think that's the appropriate place for the state to focus its energy. So what does that mean in terms of when I go down to the General Assembly and talk to legislators? It means funding our universities, it means funding worker training programs like the one that Ruben runs, a similar program at the community college. Dr. Scott has a big piece of that weight tag at NC Central University. It involves the R&D tax credit. It involves the qualified business venture tax credit, which encourages angel investors to invest in small companies. And it involves John and the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program that was invented in the Commerce Department by John and some other smart people over there in the 2000s that we very much hope to get refunded. It got cut almost completely out of the budget during the recession. We've asked for that to be increased, and the government authority has put $1 million in his budget proposal for that, for which we were very grateful. Those are the things that we're trying to do so that the guys here on what I think is the most exciting panel of the day can get from idea to market. That is not a trivial problem. And I think the last question in the last panel, I think, really goes to that. There is a valley of death, and these guys are walking. And they're proof that it can be walked, but we want to lift them up and make sure they get to the other side. So that's to give you the purpose of this panel, to my mind, is to give you a picture of that valley, what it looks like from a great technology company, and to see where it begins, where they are, and what they see on the other side. And I think think you'll hear some exciting technology and some very brave stories. So the panel this morning with me is Kim Westmoreland, who is Managing Director of Carinetics LLC, John Coker, who's Director of DoD Programs for Code Technologies, and Tony Otta, who is Chief Executive Officer of Phonics Devices, really high-end, cutting-edge science all around. I'm going to begin with Kim. Kim, you're in one of my favorite areas, life science and regenerative cell therapies. Could you tell us a little bit about Carinetics and how you got started?
Yeah. I have to tell you, my goal in life is to stay off panels like this. The only reason I agreed to do it is that I'm really worried that the state of North Carolina and the federal government is going to severely cut funding, public funding, that goes to support our efforts. I am convinced that we would not be here today if it wasn't for our ability to leverage those types of funds. What I want to do is to share with you a little bit about some of the innovative things that we're working on at Carinetics, and then tell you a little bit about how we've been able to leverage public funding. Carinetics was formed in 2008. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I was recruited by Wake Forest University to come in and spin out this technology from the Institute of Regenerative Medicine. Some of you may have heard of the Institute. We licensed 30 patents from Wake Forest. We then went out and raised, well, to date, $13 million in private equity. All of that came from angel funding. Subsequently, we've been awarded another $13 million in grant funding, primarily from the Department of Defense, but we also have funding from BARDA, from the NIH, and the CDMRP. So broad array of funding that we've been able to receive. We currently have 20 employees. We're kind of fulfilling the biotech promise in North Carolina. 20 of the 20, 7 are PhDs. We have 5 master's trained scientists. We have 5 biotech process engineers, and a few of us business types hanging around. So our average payroll is $75,000. So, we're doing, I think, everything that we can do to help replace those low-tech jobs that have been lost in North Carolina over the past 20 years and replace them with higher-tech biotech jobs. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do. We're focused on really 4 main areas. We're focused on wound healing. In that, we're looking at radiation burn and thermal burn. The biggest contract we have right now is from BARDA, which is part of Homeland Security. We're trying to come up with innovative ways to protect the homeland in the event of an improvised nuclear device going off and vast numbers of people being exposed to radiation. We're also working on nerve regeneration. We're working on bone regeneration. We're working on drug delivery. So we have a lot going on. My challenge is focusing the company and keep us all rowing in the same direction. Because anyone you talk to in our company, there's a different idea of what we might do with our platform technology. We're taking human hair. We get our human hair from China. It's an endless renewable source. Very inexpensive raw material. It costs us more to ship it from China here than it does to buy it. We then take the hair and take it through our proprietary process of extracting the proteins that are the backbone of the hair and are the things that made the hair grow initially, and then purifying them down into certain protein fractions that allow us to trick the cells into growing again in a lot of different applications. So it's really crazy innovative stuff that we're doing, but it's working. So kind of to get to the need of where we are. Originally, we received a $150,000 research loan from NC Biotech Center that helped us purchase our original, we bought about $1 million worth of equipment in order to start to purify these proteins. We also have received 2 SBIR matching grants from the state of North Carolina. Both of those grants were to support phase 1 SBIRs that we received, one from the NIH and one from the Department of Defense. I'm pleased to say that both of those grants materialized into phase 2 SBIR funding. So let me tell you about the math. A phase 1 grant is usually around $100,000. We got a supplemental another $25,000 from the state of North Carolina in matching funds. Doesn't sound like much, but it's a 25% lift in funding. Helped us achieve our milestones, get there faster so that we could get this phase 2 money. Phase 2 money is more along the lines of $1 million to $1.2 million, real money. So, I think that money really helped us get there faster. We also leveraged incubator space at Wake Forest. We're originally housed in what's called the Wet Lab Launch Pad. The rent there is subsidized. It was about $18 a square foot. Those of you who are in the research area might know that wet lab space and research space is very expensive. And it's also very scarce and hard to come by. I'll talk more about that in a minute. We've also received $13 million in grant funding, as I mentioned. And I think the secret to our success, for those of you who are out there looking for grant funding, is that we brought someone on board who can speak the language of the folks who are giving away the money. And we also have a professional grant writer on staff that helps us. We have a very deep pipeline. We now have 9 grants that we're currently working on. We have another 10 in the pipeline. So you always have to be filling the pipeline up with grant funding. Now, that's not the end of the company. I don't want us to be a research shop for the Department of Defense. Our goal here is to get these products commercialized. So, we're still in the middle of the valley of death. We're pre-revenue. So there's kind of this perfect storm going on out there right now. What we're seeing is that funding for biotech companies was down about 10 to 15% last year. It's taking us longer and costing more to get our products approved by the FDA. Their mission has always been to help deliver innovative products to the market and to protect the population. I think the pendulum has really swung over to the protect side. So it's just really, really hard for us to get these products approved. We have 2 products in front of the FDA right now, one for thermal burn and one for nerve regeneration. So where can we find ways things that would help us? For my company, it's primarily space, affordable space. We're having a really hard time trying to access space that doesn't cost more than less than $50 a square foot. It costs hundreds of dollars a square foot to build out wet lab space. And there's just a real shortage of space like this in the state. A lot of it's owned by universities. As most of you know, universities are under financial pressure. They're trying to squeeze every dollar out of us that they can. So, I need about 7,000 square feet of space right now. You can do the math. At $40 or $50 a square foot, that's a lot of money. I'd rather put that money into hardcore research at this phase of our growth rather than into the ground. So that's kind of my story, Sam.
Thanks, Ken. And well told. I'm going to turn it over now to John Coder. John's in a company called Corbett that's doing a lot of work with the defense industry and has got a number of SBIR grants. John, tell us your story.
Well, Kim might not like to be on panels, but he stole all my thunder, so I think he's pretty much hit everything on the head for small business. We started in 2004. There's 5 of us, 3 PhDs from NC State, actually. Started the company. I'm the oddball. I'm from the north with just a degree in physics. But we started working on SDR programs. I worked for the government for 14 years, so I worked both sides of the SDR program. And one thing about the government is they may spend a lot of money, but when it comes to innovative research and technology, they want it right now, they want it as cheap as you can get it, and they don't want to hear any excuses. So the SBIR program, we did win a couple SBIRs back in 2006 and one in 2007. And we got matching funding from North Carolina, which was a big deal for us because we got a $70,000 grant from them. So we increased our revenue by 70%. And that's a big deal, allowed us to hire the right people and to transition the technology into something that the government actually wants, which is nice as well. Right now, we have won 27 phase 1 SBIRs. That drives about $5 million in revenue for us, and it drives another $15 million in direct funding. So we're right around $20 million this year. You know, it's important, the SBIR program, and part of our problem with the Valley of Death is a lot of times the technology guys that come up with these great ideas really don't know how to transition it once you know, small business like us gets it done. One of the problems we got is finding out who actually owns the problem. They don't necessarily talk to the warfighter, they don't talk to the program managers, and so there's got to be this disconnect between the technology guys and the government and you know, the actual people who are going to use the technology. So that's something that we have tried to invest time in. We spent a lot of time, you know, over here at Lejeune talking to Marines who are going to use the technology that we're trying to provide. So that has been a big help. If I had one problem that I would like to be solved, it is finding qualified applicants at the graduate level in engineering and sciences that are American citizens. Okay, that would be a great thing for us to find. Our biggest challenge is recruiting right now. I need 25 people, and I've got like 5 qualified applicants coming out of places like NC State, Clemson, Georgia Tech. So we're struggling to find roles, and you know, our main driver is a lot of kids get a bachelor's degree in engineering, and they're not pushed to go to graduate school. There's a lot of competition, you know, from foreign students as well, which I understand. But I can't use foreign students. So if there was something that we could do on that level, that would be a great advocacy for the state to do.
John, I want to follow up right quick. Kevin told us a little bit about the SBIR matching grant program and what it and you mentioned it as well. Could you go a little more detail about how the money works and how those things set?
So if we won an SBIR, again, $100,000 from the Missile Defense Agency. We're developing some technology to look at high strain rate events like explosions and penetration and those types of things that the military is interested in. The grant program, we they said, hey, we need you matching funds. If you can lay out how you're going to use it. We did that. Basically, what we did was, $100K. When you subtract out, equipment, travel costs, overhead, and all that kind of thing, it doesn't add up to a lot of hours for a researcher to spend on this. So if we can, double that money, we can double our effort, and we can get to the end of the phase 1 quicker, which is what we did with that matching money. That allowed us to have a viable product to transition to phase 2. That ended up being $1 million. We've added, since then, to that particular project, we've added 3 enhancements from the federal government, well over $1.5 million, and transitioned that actually to a phase 3 contract that is pushing about $4 or $5 million a year, and actually across agencies, not just the Missile Defense Agency, but the Marine Corps as well.
Thanks, John. Tony, phonic devices doing work on something called a solid state. It's outside my area.
I'm just a refrigerator salesman from RCP. Thank you. I bring a bit of a venture capital entrepreneur's perspective to this meeting today. I started my career out of the National Laboratory System in California in R&D. Wasn't very good at it. Went into a career in venture capital where my focus was particularly in early stage, often university-based technology companies, not unlike Phononic. It is a stage that venture capital investors do not like. We heard earlier today, or in the session I heard earlier, there's a whole lot of money that goes into R&D, very little by way of which makes its way into commercializable technologies that realize a return on that original invested dollar. That was the focus of my fund. Venture capital investors will do a lot of things, but they don't like science risk, technology risk, engineering risk, market risk, all laid up at the same time. So I've got a lot of experience where public policy initiatives can help, but quite frankly hurt in that process. I was down in Carolina as an entrepreneur in residence for another company. I sort of got airdropped in to fix some issues that were wrong with that company. We talked a little bit about idea generation. In 2008, I was approached by two blue chip Silicon Valley investors out in California who presented me with the idea that semiconductors, or solid state materials, have revolutionized the transistor, giving rise to the integrated circuit. They're now doing the same for LEDs. If you just look up the road, Cree is replacing the incandescent light bulb. But why is it that we're 200 years in and the vapor compression system of the compressor is still the main source of cooling and heating in this economy? There's got to be a better way. Semiconductors have been tried, but had limited success. Go figure it out. And they asked me to look at a couple of very early stage, literally whiteboard science experiments being bandied about at the University of Oklahoma, Santa Cruz, and Caltech. And I was just crazy enough to go in and figure out the connection. As an early stage entrepreneur, I found that exciting. And for companies at that particular stage, or the stages that we're either at or have gone through, the entrepreneur's concerns are maybe a little different than a conventional in that my concerns are access to capital, access to people, and access to infrastructure. And then later on, access to the market once I've proven that the technology actually works. With a little bit of money, access to capital, I received the first commitment of $1 million the day after Lehman Brothers went under. Day after. So what's the lesson there in terms of public policy initiatives? A big idea, if articulated appropriately, can get funded. We were virtual. It was known that I would be living on an airplane 4 or 5 days a week in Norman, Oklahoma, Santa Cruz, or Caltech. But we were out to investigate whether a science experiment could be proven successful. 6 months in, we had the first true transformational event in Phononic's lifetime. We were recognized by ARPA-E in their first ever solicitation. This completely changed the dynamic of the company. It allowed me to accelerate resources, and that's a key term, accelerate. Not hold back and run longer, but accelerate and get to answers faster by supporting more accelerated research at the 3 universities, but more importantly allowed me to do 2 things. Bring on experienced entrepreneurs who are not easy to find to either replicate or replace what had been academic professor-driven research, so it had more of a commercial focus. The second is it gave us a home, and this comes to the question of why are we in Carolina? So as a native New Yorker by way of California, by way of Manhattan, I had no formal ties to Carolina. And to be honest, I think my neighbors would have been happy to see us leave. But I went back on the heels of that ARPA-E award and convinced 2 of Silicon Valley's finest to let me, someone with an organic chemistry background, run a semiconductor company in RTP, despite the fact that those 2 companies have a legacy of investing in semiconductor-based companies like Apple and Intel. So what was it? I had no ties. I went everywhere. I looked at Phoenix, I looked at Boston, I went to Stanford and saw their beautiful facilities and the equipment. But what really tipped it in our favor was right across the street, depending which way I look, is the Monteith Research Center with a state-of-the-art clean tech and semiconductor process facility with access to equipment that would have cost me millions to replicate that early on in our life when there was still intense engineering, market, and business risk in the company. And I'll never forget, I almost went in sheepishly asking permission if it would be okay if we kept the company in Carolina. And my investors and my board looked at my plan and said, you'd be crazy to bring this company out here. We'd fire you if you proposed coming out to Silicon Valley. And in that time frame, which is 18 months ago, we've gone from 2 employees to 35. We located on Centennial Campus where we were spread out amongst 3 different facilities. I still sponsor research over at the MRC and still have an office staffed with 2 materials engineers. That access to equipment has been critical in accelerating the life of the company. And we're now in a 15,000 square foot fab. We're ready to bust through the wall into the place next door at another 5,000 square feet. And by September, we will be shipping our first semiconductor-based refrigerator starting in October. All of which will be done in 4 years and 4 months. Now, is that because we work hard? Absolutely. Of the 35 people in the company, 34 are engineers with senior degrees, and then there's one person who doesn't do much all day. I'll let you figure out who that is. So with that as a backdrop to me, channeling, ARPA-E, without question, had a dramatic impact on our company. And it went to what I believe the grant system is supposed to support, mitigation of technology risk. For early stage companies like ours, whether they're spun out of a university, the key issue that private investors struggle with is, does it work? Does it work? Or am I looking at 5 more years of R&D before it does work? And ARPA-E, coupled with the additional funds we had early on, allowed us to definitively answer that question. The next stage to get financing, and here's where I think the public-private influence can hurt as much as it can help, is the next state that I'm at, do you have a customer? Does somebody want to buy what you have? And the challenge with the valley of death, I'm not wired, I look at it as the valley of opportunity. You have to burn the boats and pick one particular market with the best data that you have available to you, formulate your story around that customer, and we got an additional $15 million of financing. Now, I'm happy to point out that I landed that customer through John's office at the Department of Commerce. I cold called the largest refrigerator company in the world through a contact based in Shanghai that works for the state of North Carolina. And after 12 months of grueling negotiations, where they wanted it last week, not opposed to today, we locked down the largest refrigerator company in the world based out of Asia, where we will be manufacturing our component here in RTP and selling it overseas to this particular company. So what's the challenge is when companies enter this stage, to try to help them, sometimes the SBIR process, or in our case, the ARPA-E process, they encouraged us to go after additional financing because I could lever that financing with the venture capital investors that we had. The challenge is many of those programs are based on markets that I did not believe in, that I did not believe the economics worked. So the problem when an early stage company like ours is limited by access to capital, I prefer public policy to look at why is that access to capital limited? What's wrong with the regulatory and tax structure in this country, not necessarily this state, that's limiting venture investors, whether they be in Silicon Valley, Boston, or China, from wanting to invest in companies like ours, as opposed to wedging these kinds of companies into the SBIR or STTR path, which don't often have clear market force delineated variables as part of their charter. So if that story is tight, and if there's market buy-in, private funding is available. So I guess my summary statement would be, mitigating that technology risk, I believe, is a completely appropriate and necessary use of public funds at both the state and national level. But then moving beyond that in terms of accelerating or trying to help companies on the market side, I would encourage the audience to tread carefully and maybe spend as much of that time and resources in creating a climate where the private sector really does want to step in. My last statement, I noticed on my notes, I should have covered this earlier. On the early stage side, what made Centennial unique is that we could step in and use state-of-the-art semiconductor equipment that I just couldn't have access to at the time. The challenge that I found, though, with the university networks or the incubators or whatever you call them, is everyone's a big fan of the gleaming building because it looks great. But it's really the day-to-day operation of that building that matters. And I know for a fact that the staff over at the MRC is very understaffed in their ability to maintain the day-to-day ongoing operations needing to facilitate expensive equipment. So when you look at budgets and you look at advocacy for these kinds of programs, it's not just the facilities, but it's really the people, plant, and equipment that run it every day.
Thank you so much, Tony. Great stories all around. I've been keenly aware of people between you and lunch, but I do want to ask just one question myself. But first, are there questions from the audience? Go ahead.
When Dr. Jenkins and I were working on this STEM scorecard for sound, one of the things that really
struck us in terms of the data that we had available to us, which John Harden helped us find, thank you, John, was that while in many areas we were below the nation, an area in which we peaked was the availability of life and physical scientists. We are ranked first in the South and 12th in the entire United States in life science in particular. And just have a curiosity from this panel's point of view, why is that the case? Why are we peaking and very high in that area and in so many other areas? We're below the national average and far below our competitors in the South. But we rank high in that particular area, and it seems to be an attractor for the businesses and industries of our state. And what might be a threat to that? It seems to be generating income, jobs, economic development, and growth for our state. What's threatening that?
You know, yeah, I want to take a credit for that, or I think I have some control too. In the life sciences, it's like so many places, there's an anchor mothership that came here and spun out people. Back in the 80s or 70s, I can't remember which, Burroughs Baltimore came to North Carolina. And then Blackstone came to North Carolina. And those two companies merged. And a lot of people got laid off in the consolidation, which is sort of routine business. Smith Klein acquired Blackstone. Well, we had another merger. So over the course of probably 15 years here, we've had a tremendous number of very, very high-quality life science researchers laid off out of those companies as those consolidations came forward. And they all love North Carolina. It's a great place to live, and we have these great universities here, and a lot of them are just determined to stay. And a lot of them wound up in, do their own small companies, contract research organizations, clinical research organizations. And I think part of the legacy of that labor pool is the fact we now have 20,000 PPD in North Carolina, two of the largest clinical research organizations in the world headquartered here. If you were to ask me, and my experience over the last 20 years in this, I think it has to do with seeding a labor pool and then keeping a quality environment that allows people, makes people want to stay.
I'll just say that, unlike John, we have not had a problem finding qualified scientists. All but one of our PhDs came from North Carolina. Most of ours are postdocs, just coming out of their postdoctoral program. And we train them and kind of polish them into the way we want them to be. So, I mean, for us, I think there's probably only 2 or 3 other places in the United States where we could find similar type skills. So no need for us to ever leave North Carolina. I think we're very happy here.
Do we have time for one more? Any more questions? I'm going to throw in then, there's a burning desire. I started off talking about funding universities, funding worker training, R&D tax credit, qualified business tax credit, and SCI, or matching grants. R&D tax credit doesn't affect you guys, so you have to have income to pay taxes, and that's the only kind of tax credit needs.
Someday.
We all aspire to pay income taxes. But one thing that didn't get talked about a lot here was the qualified business entry tax credit, which is the tax credit in the North Carolina code that gives angel investors, high wealth individuals, a 25% credit against their investment in a small qualified company. That credit has been in place since the 80s and is slated to expire at the end of this year. My organization is lobbying to have it extended. But I wanted to ask if any of the companies here had experience with that. Kim, you want to say a few words?
I've started 7 companies in the state of North Carolina. Every one of them was originally funded by angel capital. We accessed the PPD money for each one of those. I would say in the current company, over 80% of our dollars came from North Carolina residents. if that goes away, I'm really worried that these people are going to go put their money somewhere else rather in more risky type investments like Carinetics. But I think in their minds, if they can immediately get a 25% credit on their taxes for the investment that they made, kind of levels the playing field. So it's a real big deal for us.
Yeah, to me, this is part of a much broader, what's the appropriate tax strategy to support early stage or just entrepreneurial investment in general. While my current company is not backed by angels, whether you call it a tax credit or whether you look at capital gains versus ordinary income, this is crucial. And my concern is, and this is where I'll put it on all of you, the average person on the street doesn't understand the difference between capital gains for the private equity world, or in our world, carried interest for the private equity world versus carried interest for venture capital versus ordinary income. It's a big deal. I had the opportunity to testify for the House Committee on Science and Technology about these kinds of issues. And they were, at the time, the tax debate was going on. So let me just put it to you this way, because following up on Kim's point, we represent the riskiest stage of investing. Already, ignoring all macroeconomic factors, investors don't like investing where we're at. So now let's run through that one step further. In my world, in the portfolio and the venture capital mindset, 1 or 2 out of every 10 will succeed. And they have to carry the other 8 or 9 losers that aren't going to return any money back to the portfolio. So now I walk in and say, I can give you science risk, technology risk, market risk, and engineering risk, and everything's completely unproven. And based on factors that I can't control, my return on capital back to you is, let's call it 10 years. So we're locking up their capital for 10 years. And then at the time when I do have an exit event, whether it's through an IPO or an acquisition, based on tax law that lumps all of that together, we're going to say, and now you're going to pay 40% ordinary income on your gain. They will not invest in our stage of deals. They will politely say, come and see me when you're at revenue, or when you're much later stage in the process where your risk is way lower and your time to liquidity is way shorter. So regardless of where you are politically, I don't want to open up that can of worms, but whether it's angel investor or not, if you just mold ordinary income with capital gains, you kill the lifeblood of what I think everybody here wants to see. So while I'm not backed by angel investors, whether it's an actual tax credit or an accelerated long-term capital gain for what they get back, it's especially in an area where like North Carolina, where we don't have a deep venture capital pool, and you do have to rely upon angel investors as an appropriate source of capital. The last thing we want to do is put roadblocks in front of that.
Tony, I'm going to take you down to the General Assembly next week.
I'm in China for the next 3 weeks, but when I get back,
Thank you very much to our panel. And I hope you'll stay with us for lunch, and those of you that have questions can talk to these gentlemen at lunch. So we are about to go to lunch. We have a very packed room, and we've got some folks sitting on the side and in the back of the room. If there is an empty seat in front of you, if you could just maybe at your table clean that area or move so someone who's not sitting at a table knows that there's a free seat, that would be wonderful. We're going to go ahead and direct everyone out these doors. You're going to walk around into our room next door to go through the buffet, and then you'll come out these doors here. And you can go ahead and do that, and we will promptly begin the next portion of our agenda at 1 o'clock, where we'll hear remarks from our Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest. So enjoy your lunch.